welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andrade here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Of course, you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. Let's start off with Saul Canelo Alvarez, the only place to be on Cinco de Mayo weekend. May the 6th is Guadalajara, Mexico, as Canelo Alvarez faces John Ryder. Where's my mariachi band when I need them? The king is coming home is how it's being billed. What an event this is going to be. You can only imagine how incredible the atmosphere is going to be when Guadalajara's favorite son returns to entertain. And it's a very Mexican-centric undercard that's been announced so far. Ray Martinez will face up against McWilliams Arroyo. You've got Gabriel Galaz Valenzuela against Steve Spark. You've got Nathan Morenito Rodriguez against the fighter that's yet to be announced. And there's also one more fighter on the card, and he's facing somebody that's yet to be announced. But that's Alexander Gvozdyk. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he's looking as he seeks to re-establish himself in a stacked light heavyweight division. Gvozdyk, of course, helped Canelo Alvarez prepare for the Dimitri Bivol fight. He was a sparring partner. They've obviously struck up some sort of relationship, and Canelo's doing his boy a favor by bringing him onto the card. So there's a nice touch right there, and it's an interesting one. In terms of this main event, I'm very excited about it. I'm intrigued, and I'll get to why I'm intrigued in a moment. But there's been a lot of criticism for it, and a lot of people are unhappy with the main event. They feel as though John Ryder is not a legitimate challenge to Canelo Alvarez, and they're very critical of this. Now, I understand that people consider Canelo Alvarez to be a hot favourite, so do I. But a lot of the criticism being aimed at this fight is actually short-sighted, for one, because of the stylistic element, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But number two, it's also a little bit hypocritical. And we'll get to that in a moment too. From a stylistic perspective, what do I mean by me saying that I find this intriguing? When was the last time Canelo Alvarez faced anybody even remotely similar to John Ryder? Gennady Golovkin, the third fight, he was of a certain age where perhaps he was risk averse, he wasn't willing to absorb the same sort of punishment, he was predominantly on the back foot and wasn't engaging anywhere near as much as he should have been. Bivol, Plant, Saunders, they're all back foot boxers. Avni Yildirim nowhere near the level of Canelo Alvarez. Callum Smith potentially could have gotten on the inside and used his physicality, but he was really bullied by Canelo and he was forced onto the back foot from the opening bell and didn't use any of his physical attributes. Kovalev, Jacobs, they also sought to keep it long. Rocky Fielding tried that, even though he didn't last very long. The two Golovkin fights, nothing like John Ryder stylistically speaking. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., my man looked like he was malnourished. He was on that Walking Dead diet. There was nothing. He couldn't move backwards or forwards. He was terrible that night. He was in terrible health by the looks of it, and that fight never should have happened at the catch weight that it did. So the last time that Canelo faced somebody that sought to get inside, use physical strength, target the body, throw short, powerful shots, was Liam Smith back in 2016. Now, that was a very interesting fight 7 years ago. It was an entertaining fight, and it ended with Liam Smith being dropped in the 9th round with a body shot, and so Canelo Alvarez won the fight. But it was a test, it was fun, it was enjoyable. But that was a younger, fresher Canelo Alvarez. A lot of people felt that in the last Golovkin fight, he was showing certain signs of decline. So how would he cope now against a man who's as thick set as he is, he's not much taller than him, and will look to get on the inside and has short power? It becomes interesting, right? There's an intrigue there. You don't want to see him facing the same types of guys again and again and again. Now, in terms of me saying that a lot of the criticism was hypocritical, there's two areas of hypocrisy that I'm seeing here. Firstly, there are those that are saying, why is he fighting a guy like John Ryder who's not in his level? It shows that Canelo Alvarez doesn't want to take risks. Canelo has taken plenty of risks. But that aside, forget the historic aspect of it for a moment. There are people that are saying these things that were also very critical of Lomachenko becoming the franchise champion and not fighting Devin Haney, who would have been his mandatory. At the time, Devin Haney was a prospect. Yes, a very good prospect. He'd, world class, you could argue. He'd bypass that prospect sort of level, but he was yet to really establish himself as this elite level fighter, or certainly not a world class name. And the reason the franchise title was invented was because they wanted fighters who were considered super champions, essentially, not to have to waste their time fighting against mandatory challengers who may have not been at their level. They certainly were not considered to be super champions in the making. And so when you consider, for instance, when Kell Brook was going to fight the likes of Kevin Bizier and Jojo Dan, a lot of people were very frustrated. They wanted to see Kell in there against the elite level welterweights. So they created this with the concept in mind that you can avoid that sort of fight and make the super fights against super champions, against marquee names. So Lomachenko fought Teofimo Lopez in the hope of attaining the one belt that he had yet to attain. And people criticized him. And they said, you're ducking. You should always defend against your mandatories. That's what makes somebody a champion. Someone that defends against mandatory challengers. So now why are a lot of the same voices being critical that Canelo Alvarez is defending against a mandatory challenger? It makes no sense. Additionally to that, there are a few people that are saying, I would have been much more interested if I'd seen him fight the likes of Demetrius Andrade. Listen, long-time subscribers on this channel will know that I've defended Andrade on a lot of occasions. I feel like he was a very talented fighter, and a lot of people didn't want to take the risk against him. When Canelo Alvarez was seeking the undisputed middleweight title, the opportunity arose for him to fight for the light heavyweight title against Sergey Kovalev. Now, it's up to you guys to decide. I'll leave this to you. Which is a better achievement, historically speaking? To seal the undisputed middleweight championship, or to jump up 2 weight categories and fight Sergey Kovalev, who is a Hall of Fame light heavyweight, but albeit a guy that was considered past his best. I'll leave that to you to decide. But Demetrius Andrade felt hard done by. That was his opportunity. The cash cow was there for him. He wanted that big payday. That he felt like he could upset Canelo. That was his moment. So I have felt sorry for him. But he also hasn't helped himself, has he? Pulling out of the Charlo fight last minute and not fighting Zach Parker. Yes, the money wasn't great, but that would have been the fight that would have earned him this particular shot. John Ryder beat Zach Parker in order to become the mandatory for Canelo Alvarez. So who at super middleweight is more deserving than John Ryder? You know, I know a lot of people are sitting there saying, yeah, but John Ryder lost to Rocky Fielding. That was many, many years ago now. Since then, he's beaten the likes of Sirotkin. He's beaten Jamie Cox. He's beaten, well, he should have beaten Callum Smith. He definitely won that fight, in my opinion, comfortably and didn't get the result. And had he won that, he would have been the one in line to fight Canelo Alvarez back then. He's beaten the likes of Danny Jacobs, which it was actually a fight that I felt he lost. I felt Danny won the fight 7 rounds to 5. So it was a close fight. It wasn't the most shocking decision I've ever seen, but I didn't think he got the job done on that particular night. But on paper, he's got Danny Jacobs on his CV. Additionally to that, Zach Parker was a guy that many people were picking to beat John Ryder, and John Ryder came through that. I wasn't, by the way. I was picking John Ryder. But the point is, he overcame that where many people felt that Zach Parker could get the job done. Who's earned that opportunity? David Benavidez? He hasn't earned the opportunity. He might be a monster. The eyeball test tells us he'd have a chance potentially against some of the big names, but he's yet to fight some of the big names. His first step up in the division is against Caleb Plant. And he himself has now started to admit that and say, it's because guys don't want to fight me. Okay, but a few months ago, when you were saying things like Canelo Alvarez is ducking me and stuff like that, many, many fighters want a shot at the throne. They want to seize the throne, but not many are willing to put an army together in order to invade the kingdom. John Ryder was willing to do that. He earns his shot as a mandatory, and it's a fight that I'm intrigued by because of the stylistic mashup. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents, about that. Moving on from that, Steve Kim has said Top Rank will be looking to move the heavyweight Jared Anderson relatively quickly, and that Michael Hunter's team have been saying they're willing to fight Jared Anderson later on in the year at some point. What a fantastic fight this is on paper. This would really get me excited because Jared Anderson, of course, is potentially a future star of the sport. He's considered one of the brightest prospects in the heavyweight division and in American boxing in general. And Michael Hunter, on the other hand, a lot of people feel that maybe he's lost his hunger. He's lost that eye of the tiger. He got that draw against Jerry Forrest in 2021. However, prior to that, he had achieved some really good things. We know that he avoided the Hrgovic fight and he decided to go down another route, and he ended up fighting Mike Wilson for the vacant WBA Continental Americas heavyweight title. He was hoping that that would potentially put him in a position to get a shot at the WBA title. So he decided to try and manufacture a path to the heavyweight title. However, he's also drawn with Povetkin, a fight that I felt he definitely won. He beat Sergey Kuzmin, and that's a really good win, right? Kuzmin, in my opinion, beat Martin Bakole. I know Kuzmin has not replicated his amateur form in the pro game, but he's still a talented guy. He beat Martin Bakole himself. He stopped Martin Bakole. Okay, he lost, but fought against Alexander Usyk in the cruiserweight division, and that was 3-3 in rounds after 6, and then Usyk started to pull away, so he gave a really good account of himself there too. He's also beaten experienced guys like Alexander Ustinov. So this is a guy that's been around the block, and he's very dangerous. He's a guy that can enter the pocket very quickly, from the outside to inside very, very quickly. And because Big Baby is very agile, it would be so interesting to see how he copes against a guy who might have faster feet than him and be able to be sudden, enter the pocket suddenly and put it on Baby Miller when he's not the one that's dictating the athletic aspect of the fight. And so it makes it a really interesting affair. It could end up that Michael Hunter is just not the guy he used to be, and he ends up getting obliterated, right? But on paper, it's a really good fight if he can find the eye of the tiger and replicate who he was a few years back. And finally, let's talk about JERMAINE ORTIZ. You know, he's been talking about how frustrated he is at not being given opportunities. Ortiz said, and I quote, "To me, it's very upsetting. I came off of a great performance against Lomachenko. Most of the world thought I won. The rankings have me in the top 10 in the world, but there's no fight for me, no good opportunity for me. It's kind of wild," unquote. Now, I personally don't think he beat Lomachenko. I thought Lomachenko certainly did enough to turn the fight around and win the fight, but he gave a fantastic account of himself. And he clearly is saying the right things. He's got that ambition. He feels like he's in the top 10 now, and he wants to fight some of the best guys in the world. But then what does he go on to say? He goes on to say, and I quote, "There are so many great fights that can be made right now. Me versus George Kambosos, me versus Isaac Cruz, Joseph Diaz, Javier Fortuna. There are many guys with big names who are willing to fight. Why can't we put these fights together?" Unquote. You see, here's the problem. The list of names that he's mentioned here, and I'm sure he's willing to take risks, okay? I'm not meaning to run him down or anything like that. But the list of names that he's mentioned here, let's actually look at them for a minute. You've got George Kambosos. Yes, a big name in the division, former undisputed lightweight champion. However, Kambosos is coming off of back-to-back losses. Additionally to that, he's had a period outside the ring. So we know that he's potentially rusty. And stylistically speaking, he struggled to bypass the jab of Devin Haney and come inside consistently against a taller, rangier opponent. Now, Ortiz knows he's got that sort of style that Devin Haney's got to an extent. He's rangy, he's tall, he can maintain distance, and he's a good technical boxer. Then when you look at the other guys that he's mentioned, he's also mentioned Jojo Diaz. Well, he too is coming off of back-to-back losses, but he's another guy who's short. And he saw that Devin Haney was able to deal with him and for the majority of the fight, keep him on the end of that jab. Towards the end, Jojo gave a good account of himself, but ultimately it was a pretty comfortable win for Devin Haney. Isaac Cruz, a short guy. Javier Fortuna, a smaller guy. You saw the size difference from when he fought Ryan Garcia. The point I'm making here is that JERMAINE ORTIZ seems to be very clever with the type of fighters he's talking about wanting to fight. Guys that are shorter than him and perhaps are, in his mind, tailor-made to be kept on the end of a jab, to be kept at long range. Now, Kambosos has fought taller fighters in the past, in the likes of Lee Selby, and he didn't have a problem to come inside. Maybe JERMAINE ORTIZ is not Devin Haney, and that would be a problem for Ortiz. There's an interesting element to that fight. Isaac Cruz is also a guy that can come low and potentially bypass a long jab and come inside and start ripping the body. So he could potentially offer a problem to Ortiz. So I'm not saying these are terrible fights, but to me it sort of speaks about what JERMAINE ORTIZ is thinking, right? He seems to want to fight guys that he can want to keep at range. Is this an unwitting revelation about potential weaknesses here? Why isn't he calling out William Zepeda? You want to make a name for yourself in the division? Why aren't you calling out Zepeda, who beat Jojo Diaz? You're calling out Jojo Diaz, why wouldn't you call out Zepeda? How about Lemos, who's looking like a monster right now? But he hasn't done that. Is that because maybe he's concerned about the physical elements of what they would bring? Or am I overreading this? Am I reading too much into this? And this is just a guy who's looking at names that are more recognizable to an American audience, and he really wants his opportunity. Maybe it's as simple as that, and he really believes in himself and he's genuinely frustrated. Let me know what you think. Regardless of what the case might be, I do want to see him get an opportunity. He seems like a really good fighter, and he stepped up and he gave a great account of himself, and he seems to have a lot of ambition there. So good luck to JERMAINE ORTIZ. Let me know what you think, ladies and gents, about all the topics we've spoken about. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. It will take you 1 second. Thanks for watching, ladies and gents. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.